Well, hello everyone. And by everyone, I mean whoever's crazy enough to learn this country, I guess. Well, I was crazy enough to learn to read Bengali, and I was crazy enough to make this guide. So now I guess I'm crazy enough to record a video about it. I hope this will be of help to some people. Maybe you have read the guide, maybe you haven't, but I highly recommend that you look at the guide before watching the video, just so you can know your way around the pages and know what I'm generally talking about, because I'm not gonna be able to go super in depth into some things. So let me just start off by familiarizing you with the country. So Bangladesh has 8 subdivisions, and you're mostly gonna region guess based on what subdivision you're in. It's kind of hard to region guess inside of one subdivision. It's only gonna work in some of them, so uh, you can't really learn to do that if you haven't played a couple games, you know? So the 8 subdivisions are Rangpur, Rajshahi, Khulna, Mymensingh, Dhaka, Barishal, Sylhet, and Chittagong. As you may or may not know, the copyright matters in Bangladesh are very strong. Whether you like it or not, it's just how it is. I know some people think it's cringe. I think it's kind of cringe for other countries, but then I don't know, I just went ahead and learned copyrights in Canada, so who am I to judge? Who am I to judge? I made this guide. Uh, so what you're mostly gonna see in Gen 4 is 2022, 2023, and 2024, unfortunately. You're mostly gonna see 24 in Dhaka, but it might appear in some other regions, and it's just gonna be bullshit. So that's why you gotta learn the vegetation and architecture, so you're not gonna be a meta slave and just rely on copyrights. So let's start off by saying that you will majorly see 2022 in Mymensingh and Dhaka. Sometimes you may see 23 there, but it's gonna be just recopyrighted. There was no new footage taken there. It's just gonna be recopyrighted. So 23 footage in Mymensingh and Dhaka that you're gonna see will look absolutely the same as 22 footage in Mymensingh and Dhaka. So Mymensingh footage was taken during spring, so if you see Mymensingh footage in 23, it's still gonna be spring of 22. Dhaka was taken during the summer, so if you see if you recopyright it with 23, you're still gonna be able to tell that it was Dhaka. It's just recopyrighted. To be fair, it very rarely shows up, so it's just a reminder, friendly reminder. As for other places where you might see 22, we're moving on to Chittagong. Chittagong is kind of an outlier subdivision. It doesn't look too much like the rest of Bangladesh. This part is very flat, and it does look like the rest of Bangladesh, but this part over here is where the mountains from India kind of come in and can get very hilly, and this coastal part is also very, very distinct. So it's usually pretty easy to tell when you're in Chittagong, even though it can have both 22 and 23 copyrights. Let's move on to Rangpur and this little blip of blue over here. This is a part of main highway. The main highway in Rangpur goes kind of like on the border here and then through the center and into India. The main highway was covered in 22, and there are bits and pieces of it that still remain and haven't been overcovered in 23. But in maps that use Pano IDs, you still might see 22 coverage from the main road here, which is quite unfortunate, but that sometimes happens in ACW, a community world, and in other maps that might for some reason use Pano ID in Bangladesh, which makes no sense whatsoever. For the same reason, you might see some Gen 3 coverage of Bangladesh in those maps, and you're gonna be shocked and not know what to do, how to region guess this. But it is still very region guessable if you rely on other clues that we're gonna discuss. So, a good exercise to remember the distribution of coverage is imagine Mymensingh and Dhaka are kind of like surrounded by foreigners, by aliens. They are not like the rest. So Mymensingh and Dhaka are 22, and everything that surrounds them is 23. So Rangpur, Rajshahi, Khulna, Barishal, Sylhet, Chittagong, 23. Mymensingh, Dhaka, 22. Chittagong, 22 as well sometimes. So let's move on to this part, Shitcam coverage. So like India, Bangladesh has some Shitcam coverage, but luckily it's not seen anywhere outside of the Dhaka division. And even more so, it's not really seen outside of the Dhaka city. So most of the Dhaka has it. Then it goes kind of southwest and west, and there is this little pocket in rural Dhaka division, kind of northwest, if you will. As for the coverage itself, it's a normal Shitcam car. Everyone's used to it. Sometimes it's a big circular blur, but sometimes you might see the car. So Bangladesh has two cars. It's white and it's black. You may see them here, but I'm gonna show you some better examples. Of course, I didn't map all of it because that would be kind of crazy. And I'm not a crazy person. I'm not Finbar. I'm sorry. So let's take a look at the coverage. Here is your average Shitcam location. You have giant circular blur, very annoying to line up roads, as you might know, but who would do that in Bangladesh anyway? With a circular blur in a rural location without language, it's sometimes kind of hard to tell if you are in Dash or in India. But luckily, Bangladesh has Bengali almost everywhere, unless you are in a field. Like this. This is why you have to kind of play and familiarize yourself with the surroundings, with the general feel of the country. But look here. Here we have a car. It's a black car. The bottom of it kind of looks like a bottom of a, bottom of a old Samsung or old BlackBerry phone. You have a big red backlight. You're gonna see the mirrors are visible sometimes. The front of a car is not always visible. I think it's pretty rare for it to be visible. But this is your general look at the black car. Let's try and find the white car, and we did. So here you can see kind of like the circular front of a car. It's very like bumpy. A black mirror. White back of a car. I can't really see the red backlight, but it is there. Here you can... It's very interesting how this ridge here appears, but this is what's gonna help you a lot of the times to teleport India and Bangladesh. So, in Dhaka city, it's gonna be pretty obvious that you're in Dhaka. You'll have Bengali everywhere. You'll have a car probably. And yeah, I guess that's it. That is it for the Shitcam coverage. Just all looks the same, roughly. Yeah. Let's move on to the next part. And that is architecture. The architecture in Bangladesh isn't really too diverse, I guess. You're mostly gonna see the same block houses with the same types of roofs. And by that I mean like the same style, I guess. They're mostly gonna be metal, and the walls of buildings are mostly gonna be metal, but you might see some block houses with no like roofs like that at all. So let's just talk about the normal stuff first. So what you're gonna see is, in general, two styles of roofs: Western roofs and Eastern roofs. So here, the Western roof is described by having this pointy end. Let's look at the in one of the locations, just for convenience. So pointy end like this, and then it just slopes down on both sides. Let's look at one more, perhaps. Yes, same thing, pointy end, slopes down. Sometimes they're not gonna be pointy, but they will have these ornaments. Like something you would see in Bali, in Indonesia, for example. Just trying to be fancy. But it is, in general, the same thing. The structure of the roof is the same. We also have a western roof here in the eastern part, which is interesting, and we will come back to that later. And let's look here. Yeah, another western roof, a bit pointy with some additional sheets of metal at the end here. Very fancy, very cool. So now that that is explained, let's move on to a second type, and that is an eastern roof. Eastern roof kind of forms a triangle below the slopes of the roof. So it's just like a window, so it doesn't really make sense how I'm explaining it, but if you've seen it once, you'll just know. So an eastern roof, and oh, eastern roof is very distinguishable even from afar. You don't have to look very closely at it. It might still have some kind of ornament at the pointy end, but the general idea is that it's gonna have this kind of window, this kind of triangle over here. Let's look at some more examples. From the front, this is what it's gonna look like. Just triangle. Illuminati shit. I don't know what they're on. This is just what's it gonna look like. You can really see them from afar, so that's very, very helpful. Pointy end, triangle. Some more examples. Here's a whole army. Okay. And let's see one more here. Yeah, it should be sufficient. So, as for the distribution of these roofs, western roof, you will never believe this. You're mostly gonna see in the west. So the main regions that are concrete only western roofs are Rajshahi, Khulna, and central Dhaka. There are 3 more regions that use the mix of eastern and western roofs, and those are Rangpur, Barishal, and Chittagong. The regions that use mostly eastern roofs, like 99% majority, are Mymensingh, Sylhet, and northern Dhaka. That can be a little tricky, but it's really going to be helpful for region guessing, and you're not going to get fooled thinking, oh, it's 22 and there's eastern roof, so it has to be Mymensingh. No. Frankly, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be Mymensingh, but it will most likely be Mymensingh, and like you're close to it anyway, so it doesn't matter. So that's that. You might see some eastern roofs in Rangpur. To be fair, they're mostly on the eastern side of the region, so that's helpful. But as for Barishal and Chittagong, it's kind of a mess. It can be anywhere. In these ones, and you will see like a mix of both. So if you see a mix of both, it's likely one of the two. There are some special roofs that I also want to talk about and touch upon, and that is a tile roof and a West Bengal roof. So West Bengal roof is known for having a concrete wall formed in the shape of a triangle like this. So the metal slopes kind of go in the side, and then they just bump into the concrete triangular wall. This is how you tell them apart. As for the tiled roofs, they're just tiled. They're very easy to recognize, just something that you see, for example, in Indo and other places. So let's take a quick look at them. I think this one, no. Okay, here. So concrete triangle, the metal sheet kind of like ends there. Not entirely sure why it's like that, but this is just how it is. Here's also a good example, kind of. Can't really see the metal sheet, but the fact that it just goes up higher than the roof itself on the side is also a good giveaway that you're gonna be in one of the western provinces. So let's now move on to the next part, and that is seasons of rice. Seasons of rice kind of go hand in hand with copyright metas. So let's quickly move here. You're not gonna have to know only the years, you are gonna have to know the seasons which the coverage was taken in. So let's look here at the map of rice production. First of all, let's look at the examples of what kind of rice you might see in Bangladesh. So the first stage is spring, when rice is planted. It's very short, it's green, you might see it in the water, you might not see it in the water, but main characteristic, bright green, short, water. Next up we have off-season. You'll see barren fields with nothing, because rice has just been harvested and it hasn't been replanted yet. So a field like this is a sign of it being the off-season. Next up we have late fall. So the rice is quite tall. It's yellow, the tips are kind of fluffy, and you might see some green at the bottom of the rice still, but mostly it's just gonna be yellow and fluffy at the top, like a flower perhaps, or like wheat, you know. The last stage is winter. Winter rice sometimes can be tall, sometimes it can be short. If it's been cut and harvested, it will be short. Just will look like grass, kind of. As for the color, as you can see, it's pretty beige. Sometimes kind of like light brown, like coffee with milk color, if I'm being poetic. So this is what it's gonna look like. And most rice that you will see in Bangladesh will be early fall. It's not necessarily taken in fall, but this is the way to just call this stage something. So it's like middle stage, but the rice is harvested twice a year in Bangladesh, so it might not actually be fall, but it's just in its middle stage when it's just tall and green. You will still see some water, and the main characteristic is that it's just taller than spring and not yellow yet, as in late fall. So let's move back on to the map. And let's start with winter. Winter rice is mostly associated in the community with Sylhet. So if you see beige rice, you can bots and Sylhet pretty much all the time, except for some rare cases. I have not personally seen them in world maps, but as a person who's played a lot of Bangladesh map, they do exist, and I've looked at coverage before making this guide just so that I'm not lying to people. It does exist, and that's why it's on the map. So coverage in Sylhet over here was taken in December of 22, but was published in 23, so it has 23 copyright. But you have winter rice there because it was taken in December. As for Khulna and Chittagong, they were covered in very early winter, and that is why here we have South Khulna, which only has coverage like here, like this strip of land, was covered in very early winter. That's why sometimes you might see winter rice over here, as well as Chittagong. This flat part we'll have some fall and winter rice because coverage started to get taken at that period of time. Next up from winter, as it's the easiest, like you can pretty much just ignore that Kulna exists and that Shiragana exists in terms of winter ice. You just plonk Silhet. Next one in terms of how easy it is to tell from others is spring rice. So spring rice, green, short, in the water, mostly associated with Kulna and Mymensing. You will also see some variation of spring rice in Baruchel, but it will be significantly taller, but it's still spring. It's just a little more humid here and a little warmer, so it's gonna be taller. And coverage was also taken like in winter, beginning of like March, beginning of spring. So just short spring rice, Kulna Mymensing. Taller spring rice, Baruchel. You have a little gradient over here on Rangpur. When Rangpur was being covered in 23, it was later than other divisions. It got a lot of coverage and has some weird stuff, man. So here in Rangpur, you'll see big spread of rice variety. You'll see spring and you will see early fall. So you can see same length, same height rice as in Kulna and Mymensing, but you might also see very grown rice or rice that's even starting to turn yellow. Moving on to early fall and fall. They are not really widespread. As I said, you're gonna see that in rank 4 and you will see it in Chittagong. You just gotta keep this 50-50 in mind. As for fall is predominantly seen in Rajshahi. Sometimes it's hard to tell Rajshahi and Silhet apart because some stages of rice might look very similar, like it hasn't turned beige yet, or it looks ambiguous, but mostly fall rice in Rajshahi, it's gonna be a little taller, it's not gonna be harvested yet, it's gonna be fluffy at the top, it's just gonna be like pure yellow. While winter rice is just going to be beige, short cut, maybe even like completely harvested. You probably know what I mean. And as for the last season, it's the off season. So Dhaka in the summer was mostly covered during off season. That's when rice has been planted but hasn't. Rice has been harvested but hasn't been replanted yet. So you're just gonna be seeing barren fields with other crops perhaps, or maybe no crops at all. And basically just the absence of rice is a key for Dhaka itself. Now let's move on to other agriculture. Now let's look at some examples of rice over here. So spring rice. Did what? Okay. Spring rice, very short, just planted, fully covered in water. Boom. Whole fields, very pretty, in my opinion. What am I doing? Okay, just select. And here, just planted. Okay, next up we have early fall rice. We have an example from Rangpur. Pretty grown, is not started yet to turn yellow. Can even grow a little more. Still see the water. Pretty easy stuff. For example, in Shiragang, yeah, it just looks like grass, to be honest, for the most part. And same here. Let's move on to fall rice. We have examples from Rajshahi. Might still see patches of green, but maybe it's just because the rice was planted a little later. And you'll see how fluffy the rice itself is and how it's starting to turn like darker brownish or even beige over here, and that's why it can be sometimes confused with winter ice. You have an example from Chittagong. It's a little oversaturated, but the premise is the same. It's yellow and it's fluffy at the top. But now let's take a look at winter ice. So an example from Kulna. Yeah, so this was taken in January, which is why we still have some unharvested winter ice. Here you can see it was starting to get cut, and here it still grows. This one even looks a little like full rice, but here you have just full beige, and that's your usual state of winter ice, which is more obvious here in Silhet. It's just very, very pretty shade of beige. Here as well. So yeah, this empty field, well, not empty, this very spacious field with cut rice, as you can see, very Solhetian thing to do. And an example from Chittagong. Well, winter rice kind of all looks the same. Yep. So, now we can safely move on to agriculture. If you're playing a map that has been pan-ID'd and you cannot rely on copyrights, or you can smell some sassy business going on with copyrights, this in combination with architecture is probably what's gonna save you if you wish to region guess, and region guess kind of reliably. So, the plants you will mostly see in Bangladesh are as follows: sunflowers, jute, tea, corn, fruit trees, and rapeseed. Let's go straight to the map maker, so I will show you everything. So corn can be planted in fields like this, or can be planted in smaller patches. Very popular, mostly seen in the western part, but we'll return to the map and I'll show you more. Speaking of small patches, this is unusual, but I've fallen victim to this one time and I kept it in mind ever since, so don't be fooled. In small patches like this, it's just a rectangular, small, tiny plantation of corn over here. Can be seen in Barishal, which is, as I said, very humid and warmer coverage. But they do still have corn sometimes. For example, even a smaller patch here, but like rows of them in the distance. So keep that in mind. So corn, orange on this graphic, mostly seen in Rajshahi. This is what you mostly associate corn with. The next, you will see, like, in the northern half of Kulna, you will see corn very reliably. I think it ends, like, pretty much where the orange square is over here. Rangpur is also very commonly associated with corn. I say associated as if there are a couple people who do that. And it's just like me and one more psychopath who learned this with me, and then like Radu and whoever else bothered. I don't know. I should stop name dropping people in my video, but yeah. This is kind of a hierarchy of how common corn is. So Rajshahi, Kulna, Rangpur. And next up we have some corn on the western border of Mymensingh. There's a river here on the border, and this is mostly where you see the corn. And small patches in Barishal, like I said. Dhaka can have some random stuff, but it's also gonna be very small patches and very, very rare, but just keep it in mind. The next one I want to touch upon is fruit trees. As you can see, it's the same old suspects. So Rajshahi, Rangpur, and Kulna. Kulna also only has fruit trees kind of in the northern part. Rajshahi is what's mostly associated with fruit trees. They're very common near Rajshahi city and like in this southeastern part. but they're kind of like spread out. But as for rows of fruit trees, like full-on orchards, you will see them next to India in these pockets, in Rajshahi here and Rangpur up there. So let's take a look at some fruit trees, just so you familiarize yourself. I have coverage right from the pockets that I've marked on the map. So there's just fruit trees everywhere. This is a full-on plantation. We have some bamboo, just don't pay too much attention to it. It's not really a good clue for Bangladesh. And more grown fruit trees over here. Now let's look at the coverage in Rajshahi. So yeah, just rows of fruit trees over here can be planted in the rice fields as well for better use of space. And an example over here can be lined along the road like this. So what makes a fruit tree recognizable is that it's usually kind of short and has this round shape. So yeah, pretty recognizable even if it's like very far, you know? You can still tell it's a fruit tree. So now the next crop would be tea. Tea is pretty much your best friend in Bangladesh. It's a free region guess. It's giga helpful. You will never mix it up with anything else. So let's just go and take a look at it. So tea is mostly seen in this southern half of Sylhet. This is where the hills are, and as you may know, tea grows in the hilly parts. But that is also a reason why there's a tea plantation over here, for example, in Chittagong. I'm pretty sure it might be the only one, but you have to be aware that it exists, because as I said, I don't want to be lying to people. I don't want to be gatekeeping anything. Just if I say, oh, tea is only here, and then you get this luck, you're gonna be mad, and I'm not here to make enemies. I'm here to make friends. So here's what a regular tea plantation looks like. You see the tea bushes, they kind of elevated from the ground sometimes. They can also be on a hill, but the main premise is very short trees. Kind of looks like coffee that you see in Brazil, for example. Yeah, just normal stuff, tea. Let's look at more examples. So here is a proper tea on the hill. Looks like majestic in my opinion. This is how it grows. This is how you usually see it in Sylhet. Not hilly, but that is also a tea plantation. Sometimes you will see those signs that say tea estate. These are like one of the only signs you'll see in English and Dutch if it's some corporation or like a tea estate. Like in this case, you'll see there's some elevation going on. It gets hillier over there. So there are just some recognizable places. Let's look here. Again, some elevation. Tea estate again. Pretty easy stuff. So as for the plantation over here, looks kind of different. The vegetation is different, the coverage is different. This is 22. Let's check the copyright. 22. So this is your good clue as to knowing that you are in Chittagong instead of Sylhet. Let's look at one more location. See how sparsely they are planted? It's just some shitty tea estate. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, here the coverage is behind the fence. So tea is the easy part. You'll always know that you're in Sylhet or right here, and the difference is the copyright, which is very easy. And it's a free region guess, because most people like click Dhaka and you're gonna be over here. That's so much damage, baby. So much damage, baby. Now, let's move on to jute, also a free region guess, because it's only seen in one region, in rank 4. So, let me Let me. Dude, where's jute? Okay. So here is what it looks like. As far as I'm aware, there are two types of jute. It kind of looks like weed, if I'm being completely honest, but it's not. So you'll mostly recognize it by it being a tall green plant, planted kind of in the same way that sugarcane is or corn is. So it's just gonna be a rectangular shape somewhere in the field, maybe separated by trees. But you see a lot of it in Rangpur, and you don't see it anywhere else. It has to do, it has something to do with when the coverage was taken. I guess it was the season for jute. But yeah, even from the distance, like here we have sugarcane. From the distance, you can tell that it's sugarcane and this is jute, so you can't mix them up. So here is the second example. Kind of looks a little different how the leaves are. This is the second type of jute. And it's also planted in this rectangular shape, as you might see. So that's your clue for Rangpur. You're not gonna see it anywhere else. Congratulations. So, next up, let's take a look at rapeseed, I think, also called canola. So, it's only seen in Dhaka, and it's characterized by being a low-growing plant. If it's not blooming, it can kind of look like rice, but you only gonna see it bloom, I think. So, you're gonna see those yellow flowers. Sometimes you don't even see the green in it. Like if you look in the distance, there's just a fucking rectangular field of yellow. Someone spilled yellow on the field. Boys, wrap it up. So yeah, this is an up-close look, and this is what you're usually gonna see it as. So it's only seen in Dhaka. It's very helpful if you're torn between Dhaka and Mymensingh for 22, or if you're in Shitcam, or if you're in trouble, or if you're looking for a purpose in life, this is it. Canola, rapeseed, Dhaka, boom. And last but not least is sunflower. Sunflowers are only seen in Barishal. Let's take a look at the map here. Yep, yellow square only in Barishal. Here it says Mega South. It can sometimes go to like top of the southern border, I guess, but mostly it's this part. So this is where the examples are from. Well, everyone knows what sunflowers look like. Once again, planted in a rectangular shape. Here are some sunflowers that haven't bloomed yet. Or, no, they have, they're just sad. You know how it is, I get them. Sunflowers from a distance. Just a splash of yellow, but you're not gonna confuse it with rapeseed because it's very much taller than the canola. And here is one more look. Yeah, they are very often planted next to corn, so it's just very recognizable. Also, free region guess. Quite a bit of damage can be done here. So, that is it for the agriculture, but we'll move on to other vegetation here. This is also your best friend in terms of having gen-free coverage or pan-ID locations. So, main trees that you can use as clues are eucalyptus, blossoming trees, and coastal trees. Coastal trees are trees that you also see in Indonesia, and they've been imported from Indonesia into Dash and Pakistan. Pakistan's obvious, you know, you're not gonna see it, you know. There is no coastal tree in Lahore. I'm sorry. That's my bad. Mostly you're gonna see it in Chittagong. This addition here is just to be safe. You'll maybe see like 1 or 2 coastal trees, but it's very, very rare. And I've had it only a couple times, but coastal trees for Chittagong are very consistent. So let's take a look at coastal trees, shall we? So, also by the way, Like if you can tell you're on the coast and you have a coastal tree, it's gonna be this stretch most likely. And if you're inland and you have coastal tree, it's gonna be like south of Camilla and this like circle over here. Here is what they look like. So you have thin tree with thin branches and very like fur looking like leaves over here. You can kind of see through them. They're very thin as well. Kind of look fuzzy, you know? So this is what they look like. Here are some other examples. Here they are in the distance. You're mostly gonna see them in the distance, unlike the first example. They're just very thin, like this. And you might confuse them with bamboo for your first time, perhaps. But they're quite different upon further inspection. Yeah, a lot of examples here. And the last one, yeah, kind of thicker tree over here, but the same leaves. So you can tell it's still the same species. Now let's move on to the second best clue. Actually, all of these are really great. Like, trees are a really great key, a really great piece of a puzzle for learning Bangladesh. So let's move on to blossoming trees. Trees bloom in spring, as everyone knows. And if you make the connection with where the spring rise is, you will quickly realize that blossoming trees are also going to be there. So you will see blossoming trees in Khulna and Mymensingh and in southern Dhaka, because that is also where spring coverage can be seen. So let's look at a couple examples. Blossoming tree. You will see two types of blossoming trees. This is the first type. It's characterized by being quite spacious, quite big. Huge, one might even say. It has these yellow flowers. Very cool. Kind of fuzzy as well. And here you can see how it kind of goes like this. Yeah, very recognizable from afar as well. Just a big splash of yellow. It can be confused sometimes with yellow leaves of other trees if you're, for example, very far away or something, but general rule is you're just gonna see the flowers, you know? Second type is a tree like this. Very thin, pink flowers, or like peach-colored flowers. Very easy to notice as well. You can see one here in the distance. If it was just a naked tree, you could have some doubts maybe, but you can kind of see the splashes of pink over here, so that's a good clue. So, once again, Khulna, South Dhaka, Mymensingh. Mymensingh is in a gradient because it's one of the northern provinces, so you're also gonna see our third type of tree, and it's eucalyptus. Everyone knows eucalyptus. It's characterized by having white bark or like cream bark, you know what I mean? So let's look at eucalyptus locations. Yeah. Can be thick, can be thin. Kinda naked at the bottom and then springs out like this. Let's look at some more examples here. They are in the distance. Very easy apart to tell from other trees that you see in Bangladesh. The white bark is very noticeable even in smog, you know? Yeah, and over here, kind of in Rangpur, they kind of tend to line the road like in Kaliningrad. So this is what they will normally look like. This is a good clue for Rangpur. If have eucalyptus lining the road, it's most likely Rangpur. It can sometimes be Rajshahi. So, as for eucalyptus, like the big region associated with this is Rangpur. You also see it in Rajshahi, and they're very noticeable there. As for Mymensingh, Sylhet, and Dhaka, they can be there, but they're never like the main clue for the region, and they are never in abundance there either. So I think I just forget about it sometimes. So it's mostly a clue for Rangpur and Rajshahi. Here's one more look at all of them. Blossoming Tree 1, Blossoming Tree 2, Coastal, and Eucalyptus. So here is the last part of the document, but I don't know if I really want to touch upon it. Basically, each subdivision is divided into further divisions. There are 64 districts, and you can learn them in Bengali if you're a psychopath, but I don't think it's necessary unless you just want to maim this country. But please do not. I don't want any competition whatsoever. That's why I'm lying all throughout this video. I like lied in the whole document. No, I'm kidding. If you want to learn it, it's up to you. I kind of just sat there, looked at the map, compared Bengali characters to Latin, and kind of self-taught myself this way. I still don't know all the letters, but it's easy to fill in the gaps when you know most of them. Anyway, so yeah. Now, that is all for the guide, but let's just look at some of the stuff that was not mentioned. I added some other clues that I didn't think were necessarily needed, so let's look at that. So in Bangladesh, you might see some mountains. Here, let's look at the satellite. You see the mountains that are in India from Bangladesh. So as you can see, they're mostly in the northern part. There is a mountain quite far here in India, but it's not visible from Chittagong, and no other mountains are visible from anywhere else. You do have hills in Chittagong, but it's not to the same degree as what I'm gonna show here. Let's switch back to this, and here's the first example of what I call a mountain. Maybe a normal person would just call it a hill in the distance, but if you see a hill or a mountain north to your north like this, you're gonna be here in the on the northern border. It might be in eastern Mymensingh over here. As you can see, there are no mountains in the western half. Or it's gonna be in Sylhet. I know it's very like cloudy and you have some like smog, so it's sometimes hard to spot, but if you do, you see it. It's a free region guess. Here is a clearer view of the mountains. It kind of look like Table Mountains in South Africa, but not really, not as tall. But the premise is quite similar. Also kind of reminds me of Roraima a little bit. So yeah, mountains north equals Sylhet. Here we even have an urban location with small mountain that you can see through the smoke, kind of. But it is hard to spot, and if you're playing a duel, it's hard to notice it in time before opponent guesses, but whatever. It's a free region guess anyway. Always gonna be here. Now I want to talk about truckers. So, as far as I know, there was a trucker from Bangladesh recently in some league. So I just want to touch upon that and show it. This can come up in a random, on a random occasion in some maps, so you just want to know that it exists, I guess. So there's some beach truckers, there's some boat trucker. Boat trucker's kind of boring, there's boat trucker here, but like no one cares. I'm only gonna show beach truckers. So here's this island south of the coast of Chittagong. I think it's the southernmost point of Bangladesh, pretty obviously. Here's what it looks like. You have some palms, coastal trees, of course, coastal trees, some trash here. This is what this tracker is recognizable by. Sun is kind of dark. You can see it's taken in October. And this is probably like most recognizable panorama. There's some palms, and these black rocks is what makes it recognizable. So black rocks on the beach on a human tracker dash. I have some more tracker over here. That is some boat tracker. Do not confuse it with Madagascar, for example. I mean, it's hard to do that. There's also some tracker here in the south of Kulna. As you can see, there's no coverage really where the like swampy parts start. It's like proper marshes. So yeah, we're just on a boat going down the river. So yeah, here's the like sunset, I guess. Here's a different look, and here's one more look, and it's just like goes pretty south out in the open water, and over here there's some walking coverage like this. As for John Free with cars with like Silhouette Man, you just look at the Plunkett guide. I think I don't want to get too in depth about it. So yeah, here is the tracker. Most of this you're probably not gonna need, but this island is it might come up. I think I've had it in ACW anyways, but yeah, this could be helpful. Now I think that is probably it. So now let's move on to some practice. You can play along with me. And I'm just gonna walk through my thought process. So we have 23 coverage here. This is quite a bit of an unusual round. One might think that there are no clues, but there's just like water, you know? It's just water, one might say. But when you do see large bodies of water with what you'd assume would be like a rice field with no rice planted yet, you don't see any like northern vegetation, you see some sand. Normally, this is Kulna. Very interesting roads we're getting. Okay, 23. This is actually quite absurd. It kind of looks very similar to what we had just now. I think I had this round like 2 months ago or something. I think this is also just Kulna. It is. So southern Kulna can look bullshit like this because it was taken in like December. So 23 over here. Some perishable crops. They are in the guide. I forgot to touch on them in the video, but this just random shit planted in the field is very Barishalian, you know? We do have some sunflowers in the distance. We have some acacia trees, some palms. This is very straightforward. South Barish. Okay, spring rice, eucalyptus, bamboo. 23 as expected. I'm just fucking clicking right for. Okay, we do have some signage, but I've promised not to read, so I'm not going to read. I keep my word. So we do have 23 coverage. Some rice, spring rice over here. Very beautiful palm. Western roof. You can see from this side, from this angle, this is an eastern roof and one more eastern roof over here. So we got a mix of roofs. Palms kind of like acacias, I suppose. Some more rice. So, mix of roofs like this and absence of jute or of eucalyptus would put us into either Barishal or Chittagong, but this is more built up, so I'm gonna go Chittagong. Boom. This is how you get a good score in Bangladesh. Thank you very much for watching. I don't know if I'll see you again. Will I? Please tell me. Will I see you again? Dude, why am I so cringe? Why am I so cringe? Well, I hope I do see you again. I don't know if this will go on the channel unlisted or not. It depends on how brave I'm feeling, because this is not the type of content I'm usually doing. But yeah, hopefully maybe I'll make more stuff like this. Maybe I'll make duels videos, but mostly I will just stream, I think. So I'll have my socials in the description, I'll have the guide in the description, and I will have this challenge link in the description as well. So you can play along, you can see how you score against me, and yeah, thanks for watching. You can always ask me questions about this country. There's some stuff I don't know, like the infrastructure, the poles. People have tried to map the poles. It's pretty useless. Other vegetation stuff like palms and bananas is also pretty useless, but if you have questions regarding anything in the guide, message me. We can talk. I can help. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.